What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. Normally, I would say we are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, but he is not here today. I'm joined by Holly Tinsley, author of We Men of Ash and Shadow. Sean Crow, he was on our last episode when we did our first Anatomy of Fear episode. Jacob Sannox, he's here with us today. And then pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. We just have Bayley, the wizard of audiobooks. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. We're here to talk about your new kind of an update on Anatomy of Fear. It's going to a general release from what I understand, and I'm interested to hear how the Kickstarter went, because I think that episode we did had to have been months ago, right? Like 3 months ago or so, 4 months ago, more. I don't know.
Longer than that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's probably a lot that's happened in the meantime. Before we get into it, I will say to our viewers or listeners that we would very much appreciate it if you liked this video and subscribe if you're new. We also have a Patreon you can join if you would like to be part of that community over there. We just put up a new Patreon exclusive podcast episode where Gabe and I are just hanging out and kind of just talking about a whole bunch of different stuff. He makes me watch a trailer for a horror movie, and I hated every second of it. So if you want to see me squirm, then all you got to do is, I think the lowest tier is like $3 or something, and you can get the video at any tier. We also play a really fun game in that episode that was a ton of fun. So definitely check that out if that interests you. You can also reach out to us on Discord or Twitter. All these things are linked in the description as well. So let's kind of introduce our guests. You guys all know Holly Tinsley and Bayley. They've been on the podcast many times. So yeah, Holly is obviously the author of We Men of Ash and Shadow and The Hand That Casts the Bone, also lovingly called Hand Boner. Bayley is an audiobook voice actor. Well, you do voice acting for lots of stuff. I'd actually be here's a question. I'd be interested to hear what you've been working on lately, even if you can't talk specifics. Like, I know you're branching out a lot.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. So I can talk. I've not signed an NDA, so I do with a lot of projects, so I can definitely talk. I recently went down to London, which was a lot of fun, to record some characters for a video game called War Tales, which I'm very excited about. It's out currently. They released it first of all with no voices in it, no audio voices. Then they released it with some voices, and now they're like redoing the voices. So it's not like Call of Duty. It's not like a massive AAA game, but it's certainly the biggest one I've done. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm gonna have to invest in a gaming computer just so I can play it, because it's only out on PC. And I'm also a snowman now, which is a lot of fun. There's a
Are you playing
center.
Olaf in the next Frozen movie, or?
I wish. What a break that would be. There's a shopping centre here in the UK called Derby, in a city called Derby, and there's going to be a 4-foot animatronic snowman who is going to be talking to visitors, interacting with them, and also prepping the children for their visit to Father Christmas, who will also be there. So yeah, I'm going to be a 4-foot animatronic snowman, as well as on the adverts, which will be running across YouTube and social media. So me and my family are planning a trip to Derby, to the shopping centre, to go and see me as a 4-foot animatronic snowman. And weirdly, that gig paid literally twice as much as the video game.
Can I just say as well, when RJ told me that he was going to be a snowman, I literally turned to my husband and said, "We need to go to Derby."
Yeah. Oh my God.
There's a snowman there that I know.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's so great.
Snowy Joey. Great.
Oh man, that's awesome. I thought you were gonna say that you were gonna be dressed in a snowman costume next to good old Saint Nick, and I'm like, dude, I would fly over there to see this.
Maybe I should have done that to get in character in the
Right.
studio.
Yeah.
Turned up in the middle of summer, sweating my ass off.
That'd be great. That's awesome. Have you ever thought about, I just thought about this, and I don't know how, just as like a casual like consumer of like audiobooks and video games and whatnot, I have no idea how difficult this would be. But have you ever thought about reaching out to Bethesda, because they have both Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online, and they have like thousands of characters in that game, all of which are fully voiced. I'm like, I'm sure they have to be reaching out to so many like voice actors.
Are there any snowmen in it? Because that would really be a
I'm
shoo-in.
sure there is. I'm sure there's a Yeti or something. That'd be awesome. But
so you need you need the right agents to do that.
Oh, okay.
So it's more of a case of like there's a lot of voice acting competition out there, and the voice actors will be reaching out and trying to make to those companies to try and get in there. So I actually found out recently. I got an email asking if I wanted to audition by going down to London, and I was like, yes, please. And then as I was writing an enthusiastic reply back, they sent another email saying, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were based near Edinburgh. Don't worry about it. So I was like, no, I still want it. So I think that I'm with a load of on rosters of companies that do video games. But that says to me, the fact that I'm not local to London means that I'm not getting sent video game auditions, judging by that email she sent to me. So me and my wife are going to move to Bristol next year, which is very, very close to London. It's like an hour's train ride away. She needs to do it because she's down in London all the time for work. She's a very big wig where she works now. And so for me, it just makes sense as well to be near London to try and get video game jobs, because I don't want to, live. I love doing audiobooks and I will always do audiobooks, but it's a dream. I love video games too, and it's a dream to do it. So I thought, like, it's a lot of effort, but I don't want to look back and go, I could have done it. I got one. I could have done it, but it was too much effort. So yeah, we're going to move house next year.
That's awesome. Would you uproot your whole studio back there and tow it down to
No, I think it would be more as cozy as it is. I think it would be more cost effective. We're looking at houses that have a spare bedroom, so I can just turn a bedroom into a studio rather than have a whole building around me, which is a studio area.
Yeah, let me tell you, I've thought about kicking my roommate out so many times, and I like just dreaming like I could turn his room into a podcast studio. I could do it. I'd have to pay more rent, but I could do it.
Maybe make that a goal when you hit a certain listener and viewer amount.
Yeah, when the podcast is able to pay my rent, I'll kick the roommate out. And
perfect. And that way your roommate's got warning as well. He can just look at the subscriber
count. He can watch
count,
the numbers as they tick out.
Like a countdown.
Just sweating.
Trying to get people to unsubscribe.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, we are still making the rounds of introduction. Sean Crow, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, can't complain. Happy to be here.
Do you want to tell us about what you write and what your books are about, or what your favorite book is about?
Oh, I don't know if I have a favorite, but no, I've got 2 series out. Godless Lands, which is low fantasy, kind of post-apocalyptic after a plague known as the Blight ravages the world. You're kind of left with people picking up the pieces. That's been a lot of fun. I'll be finishing the 3rd book this year. Well, maybe not this year, this winter. And then that one's been a little bit, I have a lot of excuses, like I said earlier, but it'll get done here soon. Then I have my sci-fi mythology, Valhalla Steel and Quenched in Blood. Those follow gun running Vikings in a turf war with chem dealing Fae. I like to mix different mythos and add that little high tech, low society sort of cyberpunk feel to it.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I was telling you before we started recording that I was currently reading Godless Lands. I've kind of been doing it over a long period of time whenever I have time to kind of pick up my Kindle and read physically. I'll hop into Godless Lands, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's really, really dark, really sad, and that is absolutely like my favorite kind of fantasy. So
Yeah, when hope gets to shine, it's from a very dark spot, but I like to throw a little there.
Yeah. Jacob Sannox, hello. Thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Do you want to tell everybody, in case they didn't see our first Anatomy of Fear episode, do you want to talk about what you write a little bit?
Yeah. So I write, I wrote, because I've finished it now, the Return of King Arthur trilogy, which is now done, finally, off my desk, which is a mix of historical and urban fantasy and a whole bunch of stuff that you'd never get on one shelf in a bookshop usually. And the Dark Oak Chronicles, which is also from a very sad place.
Yeah, I love that one.
My epic fantasy. And at the moment, I feel like I'm full-time doing the Anatomy of Fear short story project.
Nice. Well, I loved Dark Oak, that one. There were parts of that book that broke me. Like there were some parts of that were like so sad. I'm like, yes, I love this despair. But my co-host Gabe read the first in the King Arthur one, and he really, really enjoyed that. And that's kind of a modern retelling, right? I don't want to. Would I be spoiling anything by saying what?
No. It's a dual time, I think. So there's like a month for, well, starts in 2019, goes on to 2021, I think. And then alternating chapters starting in the 5th century and working its way up through different periods of English history and sort of inserting these characters into real historical situations. And confusing people who don't know English history because they're like, did King Arthur really do that? I'm like, no.
Nice. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Holly, thank you for kind of getting this all together. I'm really excited to talk about Anatomy of Fear and kind of what's been going on lately with that. Do you want to kind of talk about kind of where the project is at currently and what's happened? I know you were on for your birthday party episode, which was a ton of fun, and we talked about Anatomy of Fear a little bit, but in case people didn't see that, do you want to talk about just kind of what's happened with the anthology since you guys were last on to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, to start off, I would just like to say that it is really cool. I have now been on this podcast so many times, I don't have to do my own intro anymore.
I know. It's like you guys all know who Holly is. Like,
she's always here. Can't get rid of her. Yeah. So, Anatomy of Fear, we are literally now coming into the final furlong of what has felt like a very long race to the finish line. We are currently in the process of having a finished product, which is really nice because we actually get to see what it looks like with everything, all the kind of components and elements put together. At the moment, obviously we've got RJ working on the audiobook for us. We've got our print proofs coming probably in the next couple of days, I believe. We've got our ebook is pretty much ready to go now. So we're at the point where everything is ready. We're just waiting for a few final details to fall into place. So we are still waiting on our book plates, which, Jacob, where are they at now?
They are approaching southern England after having been around the entire world. So yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, I think we've got like maybe 3 signatures left to gather up on those before they're
No.
done.
I think I've
It's on their way to the last signature, and then it comes back to me.
See, this is how organised
So
the
we're
team
getting
is.
there.
They do stuff and I don't even know it's happened.
So yeah, I guess that
It
makes
was a
sense. So
scary
they would
moment when I
have
got
to
stuck in the air.
they would have to be sent basically all around the world so that all of you guys can sign them. I never really thought about that before.
Oh yeah, these book plates are better travel than I am at this point.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're kind of getting to the point now where, I mean, certainly for me, because so much of the work that I did on this project was coordinating things, I'm kind of at the point now where I feel a little bit redundant in this, really, because I haven't got much to do at the minute, because everyone within the team that's kind of worked behind the scenes has got their own jobs to do. So you know, Lee Connolly has been doing a lot of formatting for us and kind of helping get stuff put together. Tim Hardy's been doing a lot of the digital stuff. We've had people jumping onto podcasts, and I just kind of sit in the middle telling people what to do. So I kind of feel like
It's the best
if
place to
anything,
be.
I'm working less hard.
Okay, awesome. So the Kickstarter has ended. You're just waiting for some of the final like details to kind of fall into place and whatnot.
Yeah, so I mean, we've just done the last kind of final checks, and I mean, Jacob might want to talk a little bit more about this because he's been working quite closely with Lee just to get the kind of final book looking as kind of sharp and as professional as we can get it. Whereas I've kind of moved more onto the marketing side of things. So I know what's happening, but I haven't obviously had a hand in that as much. But yeah, I think we're gearing up for Kickstarter. I believe we're looking to start getting things out at the end of October, and then general release, we're looking to start getting things out in November. So it is literally like the last couple of weeks now that we're in.
Yeah, we're just starting to collect up all the physical rewards are gradually making their way to my house, which is, as Holly's stress level is going down, mine is going up because I'm starting to think, how am I packaging these things? And I'm going to need to employ Santa's elves or something to try and get all this stuff out. But yeah, it's all we're at the stage now where we think we're done, and then we go, oh, can we just add a question mark there, please? And then we have to re-upload the whole thing. But we actually have completely finalized just before we came to do this. So yeah,
Wow.
It's all going to be rolling this week, I think.
Congratulations.
Do you want to see some of the reward stuff? Am I doing that?
Yeah, we can look at some of the rewards and whatnot. Let's do that.
So this might be the only time you ever see them intact, because I have 2 pet rabbits that love to eat anything that we leave lying around the house. So this is one of the foiled bookmarks. You can see it.
Yeah.
And we have some of the vinyl stickers.
Very
Holly's
nice.
and mine and Sean's. And the poster, which is going to be the bane of my life, packaging it without it getting bent, is here with all the illustrations that were done by, was it Dawn?
Yeah, Dawn Larder was our artist. She did all of the illustrations for the cover and the internal book itself as well.
Nice.
So yeah,
So
it's
it's
cool
looking
seeing
very
it
pretty.
all like coming together.
Yeah. Is the book like itself printed yet, or is that one of the things you're waiting on?
Yeah, so with the printed version, because Lee has been doing all the work in terms of making sure like the settings for it are correct and just everything looks the way it should, he's getting the printed version sent to him to proof. So we haven't actually seen it yet, but they are on their way to him at the minute.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. And then we have the book set for a general release, right? So everybody who backed the Kickstarter, are they 2 different versions of the books? People who did the Kickstarter, is that one version and then the general release is a different one?
Yeah, so we have our like purple version cover, which is for Kickstarter exclusive. So that's just for backers. So obviously that's kind of limited in the number that we're going to print. And then we have our red cover version, which is general sales. That will go onto general release about 4 to 5 weeks after Kickstarter has been sent out.
Okay, cool.
So,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah, it was quite cool as well, just like with doing the release of the two, because I don't think some people realized we were doing two different types, even to the point where some of the authors in the book were like messaging me going, is this red or purple? Like, which are we doing? I'm like, no, we're doing both. There's two.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about, now that the Kickstarter is over, and it's all kind of finalized, like obviously, like you mentioned, you're still waiting on certain things to kind of get shipped out and finalized and whatnot. Is there anything that you guys learned from just doing the Kickstarter itself? Has it made you want to do another one in the future, or has it made you be like, I'm never, ever, ever doing that again?
I personally vote Sean to be in charge of the next one, because I don't want to do it again.
That's probably because I haven't been overly involved, probably.
Sean's like, I'm just sitting back and I'm writing the thing that I need to write, and all of you guys are putting it together. That's what I would do too.
No, I was just going to say, to be fair, I think right from the outset of this, I think when we brought everyone together and we kind of talked about, we're going to do this project and everyone's going to write a story, I think we were all very kind of chilled out about how it was going to be. And I was certainly very much like, this will be fine. I can handle this myself. I don't need any help. It'll be great. And then I think about 3 months in, I just started, my brain just started to like gradually fall apart. And I think I messaged Tim Hardy and I just said, I don't think this is going to be quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. And thankfully, he jumped on and took on quite a lot of the stuff. Jacob came in and took on a lot of the stuff. But the whole way through, like every author that has been involved has said, if you need me to do things, just let me know. If you want me to reach out to somebody, just let me know. So everybody has contributed in some way to, save my sanity, which has slowly been eroding over the past 12 months. And yeah, it's been a good experience to learn from. I think I would probably wait at least 10 to 20 years before doing another one.
Yeah, that's fair. Has it been, as far as just like doing, let alone the Kickstarter portion of it, just doing an anthology, has that been a much different experience for you guys than just making your own book that you're, you kind of know like when it's getting printed, or like when certain drafts are getting finalized or whatever? I'll toss the question to Sean first, to get him talking a little bit.
Like I said, I haven't been overly involved. I've kind of had my own stuff to take care of a lot. But the whole process, it's been, for me at least, just meeting with a lot of these authors and realizing how, everybody has so many skills that I feel like I'm learning from. And I feel like I could, hey, Holly, what do you think about this? Hey, Jacob, what do you think about that? That's been my biggest takeaway from this whole process. Sorry if I'm skipping around a little bit, but it's been great. I feel like I'm missing something out of that last question.
Oh, just like, what have you noticed any differences, just I guess kind of in the production of the book? Anything that's different than how it would normally be just you on your own making your book and publishing it?
Well, I mean, it's a lot less stress. I mean, from somebody who hasn't had to take on all the abilities that everybody has.
Yeah.
I've been able to write it, but it's a whole different process. You're not really, everybody got to do their own thing. So I didn't feel like I really had to change my style. Working with different editors has been interesting, but yeah, overall, it's been a breeze. I feel like just writing it, but again, it's all the other headache. So
what about anybody on the like production side, kind of like getting it printed and finalized and getting all the different drafts from different authors together? Has anybody else kind of seen any difference from just doing their own work?
I think for me,
I'll let Jacob go first.
The main thing that I've had to be more concerned with is making sure we obviously got it 100% right before we start printing out everybody's rewards in one go. like when I'm putting out my own books, like Kindle tends to take up the bulk of the sales anyway, and I might get like a few paperback sales, and then have someone say, "Hey, it's an apostrophe," and I'm like, okay, well, I'll change the file, and I never have to worry about that ever again. But now we're actually properly printing a huge batch of things that actually has to be correct the first time, which is new for me with my massively impulsive. I've got this incredible plan that I'm going to go through over 6 months, but then I'm going to chuck it in the toilet and start printing and publishing things because it's finished now and I just want to get it out there.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if it's hard to like, because I would imagine when you are kind of like proofreading your own work and like making edits and stuff, like it's your work, like you can just kind of like edit it as you go and you kind of know it already. But when there's so many rounds of edits coming through from different authors, whoever's kind of at the end of the chain, like is there someone who has to read through the whole thing, like multiple stories multiple times to make sure that it's fully edited, or do you guys have like an editor that you're using or anything?
Sarah was pretty awesome.
Who?
Helped me to Sarah, who did a lot of our editing. I thought she was awesome. She worked really well, even with all her stuff going on. I really work that she put in.
From what you've all described, it sounds like you're not going to, you would never entertain this after the trauma you've just had. But it sounds like you could run like a small press publisher now. Like all these skills that you've got together and all this like teamwork, and you've each got your place. Is just listening to it was really impressive. Or sending book plates around the world, and someone's taking care of like the overarching organization, and then there's marketing, and then there's logistics. It's really impressive. Like it sounds like you could just publish someone else's book. Someone could come to you and you could be a publisher for them. Not that you'd want to after what you've just said on this podcast.
All right, sounds good. We're all gonna...
you could all get into business together and just make a ton of money. Open up start like a straight up printing press, print the books yourselves, put them all together. But anyway, Holly, from your point of view, how's it been different than just kind of self-publishing your own work?
I mean, I will just say, first of all, I do know I say a lot that like this really stressed me out and it was like a horrific experience, but it really wasn't. I'm kind of, joking a little bit there. So I have actually enjoyed it. But in terms of the actual experience and how it differed, I think the biggest lesson for me was learning that, number one, I'm a control freak, and this is something that I've come to accept and will now deal with in my life. But that actually sometimes there's like a balance that needs to be found. So because we're working with 12 different authors who all have their own voice, they all have their own unique approach to the project and how they write their stories. It's finding that line between creating the product as we need it to be and how we envisioned it from the beginning, but also being respectful of, each individual author and what they want to put across. So I think one of the biggest challenges was there were a lot of decisions that we had to make where we had to, say between those of us that were on the production side, do we go to the authors and ask them what they want to do at this point, and deciding where it needed to be a group decision, where it really needed to be a production decision. So like the artwork, for example, I asked all of the authors to give me prompts and kind of guides and little kind of ideas about what they would want for the artwork. And then once Dawn had actually finalized the illustrations, each author then got to see their illustration, which from my point of view, I kind of think that was probably quite nice, because I think each author got like a little, like they didn't know what they were going to get until the end. So it's just making sure people still feel like their voice and their style is being represented, but in a way that is cohesive with the whole product. So, and I've just rambled on there, so I'm going to shut now.
No, that's great. That's awesome to hear about. Kind of it sounds like there's a little bit of a tug of war between just kind of like the each story being very individualistic. Is that a word? I think so.
Yeah.
And and then also kind of like a cohesive thing. But it sounds like it worked out really well. And as you can see from the background behind me, the illustrations on this book are really, really pretty. You say Dawn was her name that did the artwork?
Dawn Larder. She's just in the process of starting her own website, which I'm going to share on social media once she's got it up and running. But she is super talented.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, very cool. And RJ, so Holly, when she talked about each author kind of having an individual voice and an individual their own unique spin to each story. What was it like for you kind of going into each story as like did you feel like did you have to find kind of a new voice for each story? Not necessarily like a character voice, but like a narrative voice for each one. Did you feel like they were all kind of different? Or
so when it came to stories that were not first person, which had like a omniscient narrator, I just have a narrator's voice that I use now. Unless a book calls for something different, but like I kind of honed it on We Men of Ash and Shadow, actually, because I when I was narrating that one, I very much had gave me the idea that the narrator, I suppose the prose, which is the narrator, it felt like it was the city who was narrating it. And the city was sneering at everyone who lived within it and kind of was a bit disgusted by everyone who lived there within its own body. And so I developed that voice, and that voice went down really, really well, thankfully. And so I thought, well, that's worked. People seem to like that. I can make it not quite so sneery in the future. And I found out I was able to act a lot better by not narrating in my own voice. Like I can't act really in my own voice. In fact, I can now. I've done it in this is The Anatomy of Fear. There's one story in there where I act in my own, it's Jacob's story actually, where I act in my own voice because I felt I finally can act in my own voice how I speak. It's a smaller character, but so I have the narrator voice for stories that are where the narrator is not one of the characters. However, when the narrator is a character, I did find voices for those characters, and then narrated all the way through. So in your liver, aren't you? Wait, no. You're liver, aren't you, Jacob? Yeah. So
that's me.
So in that one, there was I read it and then I listened, kind of like took inspiration from how the characters were described. So, and also like I give the authors I work with like a character background sheet, which I find very helpful. Allows me to make initial kind of like a sketch of the voice, if that makes any sense, before really honing in on it and refining it. So in that one, like the lead character is someone from a lower class who, or perhaps a more working class type thing, who has aspirations of, I don't want to say above his station, but who has aspirations to be of a higher class and believes they belong to a higher class. So for that one, I created a voice that would be, I started off with a broad, more working class accent. And then what I did is I fine-tuned it to make it try and sound like someone who was speaking more posh than they are naturally used to speaking. So it kind of like, and that's where that narrator's character's voice comes from. So I basically took things from the story and found what I thought might be an interesting voice based on who that character is. So yeah, I did find different voices. Some voices are I would say, the same in certain stories, but I think I have that kind of flexibility within this, because in the same way, different novels will have me using the same voices, because the understanding is I'm not doing the same voice in Dragon Spirits 2 that I'm not because I have one particular voice in Dragon Spirits 2 that I've also used in Handboner. It doesn't mean that I'm doing the same character. Like, people know, because it's a separate story, it's a separate universe. But because I'm particularly good at that voice, or I can act particularly well in that voice, it allows me to better convey the emotions and what's happening with the characters. So there's a bit of a balancing act between creating individual voices that people haven't heard before versus how well I'm able to emote and act in a particular voice. So I feel like I did have I mean, it's still being recorded as we speak, but I feel like I do have the because it's an anthology, I'm able to like occasionally reuse the voice, but people know that's not the same character, but it's really suitable for a character, and that character requires perhaps a lot of emotional heavy lifting, a lot of emotion work. So I will use that because I know that that's a really good tool for that job. That's a really reliable tool for that job, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I really liked your character sheets, actually, and that you specifically asked for like what that you were listening to while you were writing those characters. That's a huge thing for me. I have playlists for everyone and scenes and stuff. I really love that you asked for that.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, music's a huge part of my creative process. So I assume it must be. Oh, that's an amazing flagon, by the way. So I assume that. So I guess it might be for other people. So I'm delighted, yeah, that you enjoyed the character sheets and put the playlist on there, because then I listen to it. Sometimes I have it on very quietly while I'm narrating, and it really sets a tone and stuff. And also, when I narrate in silence, I concentrate too much on my breathing because I can hear my own breaths because the microphone picks up a lot. Whereas if I have a little bit of music on, I don't notice my breathing. So yeah, I'm glad that's been really helpful. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed that aspect of the character sheets in general. Thank you.
Yeah, I bet you get a bunch of great feedback on the character sheets and stuff. I've heard a couple people talk about it, like Holly being one of them, and I think LL McCrae, right? She did the Iron Crown, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, she mentioned it too. That's an awesome idea. I love that so much.
Oh, good.
Was it so speaking of the character sheets, then was it interesting like working with each author and kind of seeing the differences in like how they view their characters, or how much even like how much they care, you know, what a certain character sounds like or anything? Was there different kind of levels to that, or was there anything interesting about working in an anthology rather than a single book with a single author?
Yeah, so like some people go into a lot more detail, whereas, you know, people like Holly don't give a shit. And just
I was literally waiting for you to say that.
And just said, just do what you want with it.
Yeah.
So there is, and what I actually find very interesting as well in certain, you know, character sheets, is interesting to find out what certain authors think are the most important things about characters. So certain authors will hit certain traits about the characters all the way through, and then another author would hit certain traits, or a different kind of trait, all the way through. So it's like you're getting a picture of what they, according to this sheet, think are the most important aspects of characters and how to make a character. Like some people will put, the one that I find very helpful in particular is the class/education level. And some people will put like just working class or upper class, or like street smarts or university educated, where other people will go into quite a long detailed stuff about their, you know, they were brought up in this kind of environment, and then they went on to do this, and they have ideas that they want to, like we mentioned with Jacobs, they have ideas that they want to be above a certain level. That was an extremely useful thing that was in the character sheet. Yeah, I find that really interesting to find out who, well, not who, but that certain authors place importance on different aspects of what makes up their characters.
It's a good opportunity to be able to, like for me, in that it emphasizes some of the theme of the story quite distinctly, even more so than character, because there's quite a lot about class and privilege and how we work together or don't in mine. So being able to say that, you know, to RJ allows him to, you know, it's nice to know that that kind of sticks.
Yeah, definitely. And with fantasy stories, which they so often are, like fantasy stories are generally the ones I work with predominantly here in the West, if such a kind of thing exists, are kind of like based on medieval, Germanic, British kind of European societies, where obviously we have massive class and financial inequality at the moment in the UK, certainly. But back then, in the feudal times, or, you know, even Victorian style times, if you're based on that, the social stratas are even more emphasized. You know, if you want to go for a medieval style fantasy, you've got the dudes in the castle, you know, you've got the kings of like a principality, and then above that you've got the emperor or something who rules over all that, and then way down at the bottom you've got the people, you know, plowing, well, actually no, you've got the beggars and the homeless, etc. But you know, and then you've got the farmers plowing fields and digging up potatoes for a living. So it's really useful to know that, certainly for fantasy stories. And even in Victorian times, there was you know, really obsessed with class and propriety and stuff like that. And so it's really interesting and very useful when narrating fantasy stories, because fantasy stories have a huge element of class in them if they're based on a pre-existing history that we're used to.
Right. So I was also going to ask, RJ, since you've read, or really anybody, I assume that everybody's read all the short stories. Is that true? Have you guys all read each other's work? What do you guys think is the scariest story? Now, I haven't, I know that last time we were on, we kind of talked about this a little bit, and somebody had said that the stories, they're not necessarily meant to scare you, but they're about like the theme of fear. But I'm curious if any of them are sincerely spooky stories.
Yeah, it's pretty. If you're going for scare or just like but yours left me going, Holly, I was just along for the ride. I got a kick, you know. Yours was kind of, Jacob, was kind of like that slow lurching. You're like, oh, this is not. Oh, this isn't good. This is bad. Holly, I think read it. Like, I want you to write a book there. Just say.
Me too. And it can be done. And let me narrate it, please.
You never know. It may happen. It may be a while, but I actually thought initially when I read all the stories that I was gonna find Zamil's the scariest, and initially I did. I mean, there are a few there that are much more. Everything's kind of a mix between horror and fantasy, and we were always clear about that from the start, that this was going to kind of cross genres, but obviously some lean more into the horror side of it, some lean more into the fantasy side of it. So like Lee's is very kind of horror as well. Trudy's has got that kind of gothic gas lamp vibe to it, but in terms of the one that actually made me feel like the most kind of fear is actually Jacob's, and that's a recent thing because during the editing process he kind of revamped his a little bit, and oh my god, when I read the new version, literally it was just like this, like Sean said, this just creeping horror. And I think what really got me was that it's so, I hate to say this, but it's so relatable in a way to how the world kind of actually works in real life, even though it is very much a fantasy story. there's just something about it that is so true to like the way society works, and that really creeped me out. I mean, I was lying there awake after reading it, just like staring into the darkness, being like, "What is the world?"
That's fantastic.
But again, that
Sorry,
goes
go on.
back to the editing, because the first version, I haven't done short fiction before, and Sarah Chorn sort of stepped in and said to me, "You're trying to get a whole novel into 10 to 12,000 words here. We need to kind of, what's your central message, and cut some of that out." And I did have to do a fair amount, and I'm at her suggestion moved a few of the decisions. They didn't change, but it just changed the tone of the story. And that, going through that process, when I first read the feedback, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm dreadful at this." But then once I started to get my head around it, really appreciated the feedback, and I do think it's a better story, for it.
Nice.
I'm trying to think who else is scared me. There was Emil's. There was somebody else's that really scared the life out of me. Trudy's kind of ripped my heart out, but it wasn't like classical. Sorry, not Trudy's. Crystal's really ripped my heart out.
Oh, okay.
And Trudy's reads much more traditionally. It's not like a traditional like a rip off of one of the old, like Bram Stoker or Mary Shelley or something like that. But it has a lot more of those beats, a lot more of that vibe of some of the more the beginnings of the genre, which is kind of good that it's at the start of the book, really, to kick you off, because we do take it to some quite strange places. There's quite a lot of I don't want to be giving spoilers away, but there's quite a lot of flintlock in there, like Sean's, and I thought Lee's was really good as well, in a more of a Victorian setting. I'm just rambling now, just thinking about the stories. Basically, you've caught us at a point where me, Holly, Tim, and Lee, did Lee read it through several times? I think so. Yeah, we've just been in this book for the last few weeks, and we finally just put it aside. So I'm actually absolutely saturated in the stories at the moment.
I'm interested to see what Lee did, because he also did those books about the zombies, right?
Yeah, the Dead Sagas. I narrated those. They're terrific fun.
I still need to read those. Maybe I'll do that for like a Halloween thing this year.
Cool.
But yeah, I would imagine that he's got a lot of maybe not body horror, but like, I mean, parts of zombies are most likely falling off. So
yeah. He's certainly good at writing gore.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Nice.
What I really like about the book is that it because it's fantasy authors. Well, not exclusively fantasy, but it really highlights the broad range of things that horror can be. That like all of these things are horror stories, and so many of them are very drastically different. It's a real as a massive horror fan, like a huge horror aficionado. I used to have like a magazine column writing about horror movies. Like, it was such a treat to be reminded of how great horror can be in all these many different ways. In this, like, I went to the 50th anniversary screening of The Exorcist the other night, which was incredible. And I love that. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. But also a horror movie is The Evil Dead, which is very, very different. And I would even say a horror movie is The Limehouse Golem, which is part, kind of a detective story, kind of Jack the Ripper type thing. So yeah, it was wonderful reading these books to get all these different, to be reminded of all these different facets of what horror can be.
Yeah, that's super true. I've actually been doing we'll talk about it more in a little bit here, I think, but I've been doing a lot of hunting for various horror books for our Halloween episode coming up. and I'm reading through all these descriptions, and I'm in like the horror section, and like in looking at books that people said were like super scary or whatever, and I'm really amazed by how diverse horror really is. Because when I think I don't read a whole lot of horror, I don't watch any like horror movies really, and so when I think horror, I'm like, oh, like paranormal, like ghosty, like haunting things that like scare you. And looking through the horror section, I'm like, man, some of these are like, psychological thrillers. Some of these are like straight up mysteries, like trying to like solve a cold case murder or something. And then other ones are like the paranormal, like haunting or like vampires or zombies or whatever. And I'm like, man, it's really similar to fantasy in that way, where there's so many subgenres and there's so many different like viewpoints on what is horror, like what instills fear. And so that's something that I've kind of learned lately just by browsing Audible and trying to find something for us to read.
I think also, I don't think the point of horror is not exclusively to cause fear as well. You can have a lot of horror. There's plenty of horror stuff that is not designed to scare the life out of you. You are looking at the most obvious examples would be things like the Munsters and Addams Family, which is firmly horror, but that is not designed to be scary in any way. You look at Frankenweenie, which I cried my eyes out at Frankenweenie. But horror is not about making you feel very sad. Well, most people would go, horror is not about making you feel very sad. So it's so broad that people think there's like a prescribed reaction to horror in the way there's a prescribed reaction to comedy. But I don't really think there is so much. Sometimes it's just about horrific circumstances more than feeling horror or feeling dread. It's about circumstances which are horrific taking place. Or disturbing in some way.
Yeah. Do you think that we've been conditioned to think that horror is a very specific way, mostly because of a lot of the like popular horror movies, like all of not, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of the like popular ones, a lot of the ones that people talk about or show up in theaters or whatever, they have like jump scares and unsettling music and all this stuff, and it's all designed to make you feel very like unsettled and not like comfortable. And do you think like when it comes to books, we've maybe because of a lot of those movies, we've been kind of conditioned to think like, oh, this book needs to scare me?
Yeah, a lot of it's marketing. Like even with movies, for example, The Terminator is a horror movie. The Terminator is a slasher movie, as much as a science fiction movie. So, but with horror, especially in paperback, especially in novels and books, horror, and I'm sorry if this is a shock to any of you, but horror famously doesn't sell. So so the stuff that's overtly marketed as horror is marketed because they know horror people are going to, there's dedicated horror fans like myself who are going to hoover up that horror. Whereas what you'll find is a lot of books, maybe less so nowadays, but a lot of books is certainly in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s were marketed as thrillers or psychological thrillers because that is a more saleable concept that would get more sales than calling it a horror would. I think a lot of it is to do with the marketing as well.
Well, you could even about Grimdark, I mean, Grimdark has a lot of horror aspects throughout it. I mean, I think we're all Jacob, you're Dark Oak, man. Like there are a lot of horror aspects in that book, but it's Grimdark. Like you're saying, like you're taking it and you're adding fantasy, you're throwing that in there, with those NPCs, like you even said with your voice for Tinsley's series, it's that hates itself, because it's so horrible, the living condition, everybody is there. I mean, you're going over the dysentery that happens when you're on the battle. You know, it's a brutal, horrible look, you know, through that glass. So
yeah, you're right. You're bang on, I think.
All I was going to say is I think part of this comes down to, I think there's a difference between horror in terms of horror as a genre and horror in terms of horror as a concept. And I think part of the approach that we had, particularly with this book, is that we wanted to look at horror as a concept. So something to be explored, to be examined, and kind of this kind of assimilated and broken down. Because for me, a big thing of horror, and what I, not that I enjoy, but what I get something out is the ability to break it down and understand, why does that work? How does that work? Why is that scary when it is just, you know, whatever it is, like a monster or like a shadow on the wall or whatever it is. I like to try and understand it. So I think coming at a book from that side of it meant we didn't necessarily avoid the trappings of like horror as a genre, but I think it meant it was more open to interpretation and kind of bringing in those other elements of fantasy and grimdark and flintlock and that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm excited to read it and see what all the different takes on fear are, what the different takes on horror are. I'm sure I'm gonna love it. Do you guys know, is it coming out by Halloween, or is there a release date at all yet?
So it's, I mean, the Kickstarter rewards will start going out before Halloween. Obviously, because of postage and shipping, we can't guarantee whether it's going to get to people before then. But hopefully, people certainly start seeing the digital rewards before the 31st of October. The general release we will then announce as soon as those have been shipped. So that will be after Halloween. But obviously, people can just keep an eye on social media, and we'll put updates and things up there as well.
Cool. RJ, do you know how long the audiobook is going to be?
Not too much longer.
I mean, like how long?
Length.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at like a good, I want to say like 12 hours. Like, okay, cool. maybe a bit more. Yeah, I'd say a bit, about 12 hours, I'd say.
Sweet. Well, before we kind of get into just talking about, well, we've already done a bit of it, but before we just get into like talking about Halloween coming up and our, you know, favorite like scary movies and books and stuff like that, is there anything else you guys want to do as far as promo for Anatomy of Fear? Anywhere you'd like to direct people? Well, I guess there's nowhere to really direct them anymore because the Kickstarter's over. Is there anything else you'd like to say about it?
I have one thing which is very exciting, which actually we haven't agreed that I'm going to talk about this, but I'm just going to pull rank and talk about it anyway. So we actually, when we did our cover release, we got really good feedback from the artwork that we obviously had for the cover, and a lot of people saying that they really liked it and they would wear it on a t-shirt. So obviously, having listened to the people, we are bringing out Anatomy of Fear t-shirts. So that is going to be available probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks, hopefully sooner. We're just waiting for the design to be approved, and then I will put links up on Twitter and social media. So anyone who wants a shirt can get one.
Awesome. Will that be through just like a store type of website, or is that through the Kickstarter? Or
yeah, so we're actually in the process of setting up our own merchandise store. So there will be t-shirts going up first, and then following that we will have merchandise for all the individual authors as well. So you can go and kind of pick, like, if you want to get like a Sean Crow t-shirt or like a Jacob Sannox mug, you know. So it's very cool.
I get my face on that like this.
Let's go on to talk about, we'll kind of close out with this as we're getting close to Halloween. You know, I'm starting to, you know, think about like scary books and stuff that we can read for the channel for like our Halloween episode. I'm sure Gabe is thinking about like scary movies that he wants to watch and stuff. Do you guys have any sort of routine or anything that you guys typically do for Halloween as it gets closer, or anything fun that you do on Halloween? What is your kind of fall spooky season experience like?
I got 3 little kids, so it's going to be decorations, pumpkin carving, trick or treating, the whole works. I don't have a whole lot. I used to be really into scary movies, watch Event Horizon or something like that. Ones that are top tier in my opinion, but else just changes things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we get the house all dressed up, like decorated for Halloween. We don't go like overboard, like Christmas overboard, but like, Halloween. Me and my wife love horror and spooky stuff. So yeah, we watch a bunch of horror movies and do some pumpkin carving. That's always fun. Yeah. So we get into it. I always make a pumpkin soup every year, like a thick pumpkin soup, a pumpkin and cheese soup. So yeah, that's kind of like a tradition for us. Yeah, it's with the innards of the carved pumpkin, because I loathe the idea of them just going to waste. So I thought, yeah, we can do something with that.
Is it good?
Yeah, pretty good, if I do say so myself. Yeah. I mean,
Nice.
The cheese helps, but cheese makes everything.
Oh, that's funny. I never thought about eating the innards of a pumpkin. I've always just thrown them away.
Yeah, that's what goes into pumpkin pie, I guess.
Oh, I guess I never really thought about it. Huh.
What do you think it was?
I don't know. I never really thought about, like, I thought it was like pumpkin flavored pie, like a pumpkin spice latte isn't the innards of a pumpkin mixed with coffee.
But if people didn't eat pumpkin, how would they know what pumpkin flavor was?
I guess that's true. I don't know. I like maybe somebody licked a pumpkin one time and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's pumpkin flavor."
Yeah.
Oh.
But they didn't go so far as to eat it. They were like, "That's delicious. Not going to eat it though."
What about you, Holly? Any Halloween rituals? Any traditions?
I mean, the last few years we've kind of not really done anything. Because in our house, my son's birthday always falls either on the weekend of Halloween, because his birthday's the 2nd of November. So we have the kids all break up. They have a holiday in October for a week, and it's always the week before Halloween and kind of his birthday as well. So when he was younger, we used to do a lot of like Halloween themed stuff for his birthday. So we did, I remember one party where he invited all his friends, and at the time, my mum was working in a museum, and she actually got access to the museum during the night. So we had the party in there with all kind of the exhibits and stuff in the dark. We had like apple bobbing, and we did like a ghost tour through the museum. And at the time, we all thought this was an absolutely brilliant idea and that all the kids were going to love it. And then we took this bunch of like 10-year-old kids into this museum. And as we were walking through, like my husband and a couple of like the guys that were there thought it would be really hilarious to start making noises and like scraping their keys across like the walls and stuff. And these kids, oh my God, they just lost it.
Oh no.
I had to then explain to like 20 odd parents why their children were traumatized by this party. And that kind of, it didn't stop us doing Halloween, but it was definitely a lesson learned.
They're like, a few weeks later, they're like, "Hey, my kid refuses to go to museums now. Do you know anything about that?"
Not me. No, don't think it. No, I mean, we don't really do anything particular. But where we live, it's a very kind of rural. I mean, we're in the town, but around us it's all very rural. So there's a lot of the like the big kind of Halloween events, like down the road. There's a Gaslamp Victorian town. They always have like full on like Halloween spooky things. So yeah, and just because I want to get this in somehow tonight, I actually have a book that I'm reading at the moment. So you can all be amazed by the fact that I'm actually reading a book. But we went to Gloucester this weekend. It was our belated wedding anniversary. We decided to go away for a little mini break, and we found it is like secondhand antique book lovers paradise. This high street, I think there's like 6 independent bookstores on one high street. And they're all in these like little old weird, like crooked buildings with like floor to ceiling bookshelves, just with proper leather bound dusty tomes, and it was just incredible. So I got myself this, which I'll show you because it is beautiful.
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
if you can see that. But that's, I mean, it's not an old book, it's like a reprint version, but it's just, inside is stunning. But it's Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And it's not a horror book, but my God, is it horrific. So this is my Halloween read for this year.
Nice.
Who published that version of it?
So this one is Penguin. It's a Penguin Classics. This one.
I think there might be a series of those because I keep on my desk in my studio. Sorry.
Well, I think we answered the question. What the speaker is at the moment.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
That looks a lot like my edition of Dracula. Very similar vibes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a horror book, obviously. And that's Penguin, yeah. So it must be a similar kind of thing, yeah.
Nice. By the way, would anyone have been surprised at all if Holly had said that she like performs a seance every Halloween or something? Like, would that be a shock to anyone? I'd be like, oh yeah,
Not
that
one
checks out.
No.
What about you, Jacob? Anything fun for Halloween?
We always throw a Halloween party. So we decorate the whole house and get drunk and carve pumpkins, and went up to a pumpkin farm last year with the reluctant teenagers who pretended not to like it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the time of year when my creative juices really get going in like October, November. It's all the like low-lying fog and things. You know, I'm always writing about anything that's horrific in my books comes out of October, November.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I remember as a teenager, I also hated going to pumpkin patches. My mom would try to drag me to one every year, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. But now that I'm older, I'm like seeing all my friends like grow up and get married and stuff, and they're all like, "Oh, here's our picture at the pumpkin patch," and I'm just like, like a little bit of FOMO, like I kind of want to go to the pumpkin patch.
I kind of want to take you to a pumpkin patch now.
Well, so is anybody any scary movies? Are you guys watching anything scary leading up to Halloween?
We, my wife and I went to see the 50th anniversary of The Exorcist the other night, and it is like, I've seen it a few times, but seeing it in the cinema, and it was her first time, and what a first way to see The Exorcist. It really made me appreciate fully what a complete masterpiece that movie is. Like, it's just jaw-droppingly good. Every single shot is like milked for its maximum artistic potential that it could give. It is just, and also like I've seen a lot of possession and horror movies, exorcism movies now, but The Exorcist is 50 years old. It's still an 18, which I'm delighted by, and it goes harder than any other possession exorcist movie I have seen come out in the last half century. Like, it is so disgusting and repellent and vulgar and blasphemous, and Reagan, the little girl, when she's possessed, does stuff that like I don't think it would get allowed to be made now, because it would piss off too many perhaps more and I don't mean this in a political sense, but in more, I think it would piss off a lot of more conservative type people, because it is like some of the stuff she does, and then while she's shouting stuff at her mother and then doing stuff to her mother afterwards is insane. Yeah. I've seen it a lot, but seeing it in the cinema, it shocked me. Like, it's amazing. I love that movie. So yeah, that was a good experience.
Nice.
Say another one that's held the test of time is The Thing. I still think that the first The Thing was
Absolutely.
still, you go and watch that and you're like, oh, that's just disturbing to see. I know it's just all makeup and whatnot, but holy crap, they did top notch.
Yeah, that's one I gotta see that I had never gotten around to.
Oh, it's a classic.
Yeah, the Thing was the movie that because like my son's big into like horror movies and stuff, and he's actually, when he goes to uni in a few weeks, he's going to go and do film production, and The Thing was the film that really kind of like captured his attention, like in terms of wanting to work in the genre and kind of see what he wanted to do in terms of a career. And like for me, it was just like this, because I remember watching that like when I was like 18, 19, like similar kind of age. And then for him to then kind of be watching the same things and getting like so excited about them that, you know, it's actually sparking a, you know, career choice. That was kind of, that was really incredible. I don't know if this is kind of in the same vein as well, but one I recently rewatched that I'd kind of forgotten about, but is absolutely brilliant, is The Frighteners. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Is that the goat? He has like ghosts he can see.
Yeah, I mean it's horror, but it's kind of like funny horror at the same time.
Okay.
Michael J. Fox is in it, I think.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox, and I can't remember who the other guy is actually. I might have to look it up. But yeah, I just randomly found it, and I just remembered watching it years ago.
That's cool.
John Carpenter's one of those people that really struck gold, absolute gold, twice in the horror genre. Like he made The Thing and Halloween. Like it's it's crazy that one person made those two movies. Never mind all his other classics like Escape from New York and things like that. And They Live.
Yeah. Has anyone seen Barbarian? It's a dude, that was good. I don't like scary movies like really at all. But somebody made me watch Barbarian with them, and it wasn't like it was scary. Like there were parts of it that were scary. But man, that was such a good movie.
Yeah.
The ending was like super weird, but it was also like, man, I don't know. I look at that one, I'm like, man, that was really, really well done.
It's really good. Yeah. My friend runs a horror film festival called Celluloid Screams in England, or she co-directs it, sorry. And they show like a secret film every year. And this year it was like last time or the year before, last time it was like an advanced preview screening of Barbarian, and so obviously the horror community were really looking forward to it. Just lost their shit. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah, Barbarian's a great film.
Yeah. Another one that I really want to check out that I haven't seen yet, but I've seen like trailers for and like just like screenshots for and stuff, are there's a series called Fear Street, and it's supposed to be kind of a play on like the old like slasher films from like the 80s and whatnot, and it's very like I think the seasons are like 70s, 80s, and 90s, and it's kind of inspired from all the films from there. And yeah, I typically don't watch horror movies just because they affect me a lot. But that's one where I'm like, I think I could do that one. I don't know. Have you guys seen commercials for this or anything? Fear Street? I think it's on Netflix.
What's it on?
I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
But
no.
I'd like to watch it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to talk about some disturbing ones? Cabinet of Curiosities.
Oh, I have seen a couple episodes of that because I like Lovecraft. And so
But there were a few that once I got done watching, I was like, I don't want to watch it anymore right now. I feel a little like one. Did you watch the one with the paintings?
I don't think I saw that one. I saw the one where the guy was working in a morgue like after hours.
Yeah.
There was that one, and then there was another one. I forget what it was. It was a little bit more Lovecraftian.
Yeah, a lot of Lovecraft based horror in that. There's some good ones. That what's his name? I really like that director. I'm just drawing a blank.
Oh, is it
Bays did Pan's Labyrinth, did
Guillermo del
Toro.
yeah, thank you. Del Toro.
okay? That's what I was gonna say, but I'm like, no, it wasn't Guillermo.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He does quality work. I love that guy's work.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too. Again, Pan's Labyrinth is one of those things that's a horror, but it's not like, and there are scary moments, but I don't think the point of it is to make you terrified.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though it's like definitely a horror.
Yeah, I agree. It's a masterpiece.
Before we go, I was gonna ask you guys if you had any horror book recommendations that legitimately scared you. I think that it's really hard to like. I've read a lot of horror books, like despite how little how few movies I've seen, horror movies I've seen. I read a lot of horror books hoping to kind of get that scare. There's been a couple that have done it for me, but I feel like most of them, like we talked about earlier, especially in book form, horror is very kind of diverse in what horror means as far as literature. Have you guys read any books that like legitimately scared you or had you kind of peeking over your shoulder a little bit?
I think
The closest. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say Pet Cemetery had me up until like the last 30 pages of that book. But again, that we had just had our first kid. I was in that mindset. I have children now, and then I'm reading this book about this. You could sit there and go, I get what you're gonna do, but don't do it. Come on. And then you keep reading. Going now.
No, stop.
King loses me in a lot of his books, though. I feel he hooks me, and then last 30, 40 pages, something weird.
King really hasn't landed for me yet. The only thing that I've really liked by him is it 11/22/63? I really enjoyed that one. That was more of like a time travel.
There's some really horrific scenes in that book, though. I was just going to mention that. Like, in the early bits where he's testing it, the family settings, what had happened to the janitor and his family, I was just like horrified by that. Stephen King's, just very rudely implied I don't like these books, but he's my favorite author. But Pet Sematary absolutely traumatized me. I had a toddler at the time when I read it, and I just remember keeping them so close afterwards. It was that scene at the start where he's just the kid's running towards the road, and his fingertips are like grasping the back of the kid's jumper or whatever, and I was just like, oh god, I can't even talk about it.
Yeah, I gotta check out that
one.
Pet
Cemetery traumatized me. Put it that way.
I hear people talking about Pet Cemetery a lot. That's definitely one that I gotta take a look at for sure.
The one that got me closest to being frightened is actually my favorite book of all time, which is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, which is just like, if you've seen any,
that's so different to the film.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've seen any of the movies, none of them, not the Omega Man, not the Last Man on Earth, not I Am Legend, are anything like the actual book. I Am Legend. It's quite short. I blasted through it in a weekend, and I'm a really slow reader. So I would highly recommend everyone check that out. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible, because it really goes through the logistics and the practicalities of being what you believe to be the last person alive in a vampire infested world. And they are not traditional vampires,
right?
But like it's just, it's so inventive even now, like so clever, a lot of the stuff in that, and so very different. The things that the vampires try and do to lure him out of his house are absolutely grotesque. I highly recommend I Am Legend. It's incredible.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, that bit.
Yeah, that bit. I was going to say earlier, actually, there was much more of a move from maybe psychological horror into jump scares and slasher in terms of movies and stuff. And I think that's reflected in fiction a bit as well. But so what's interesting with I Am Legend is, it's kind of like a zombie movie, but they're intelligent, they're talking, they know where he lives. They try and get him out of the house every night with all these various creative ways, playing on his own weaknesses and things, it's so different.
Yeah, it's a great book. Highly recommend. It's my favorite book ever. Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
I just read one by someone called C.J. Tudor. It's called The Chalk Man, which is inspired by those early Stephen King books where it was always a group of kids, and then you see them again like when they're older, like in It or something like that. But it was like the English version of that, so it was kind of nice to see kids in England like mucking about in the 80s and all those references. But yeah, that paid off quite well. And I've been in a bit of a reading slump recently. I was beginning to think I wasn't going to want to read fiction anymore, which is huge for me. But that kind of got me back on the reading fiction train.
Nice. Okay. What about you, Holly? Anything you've read that has kind of scared you in the past, or?
I would say if I was going to recommend one that I had read and like enjoyed in a really weird way, it's one of those books where it's always got a bit of a mixed reception from people. People either love it or they hate it. It's Perfume by Patrick Susskind. I don't know if you've read it or if you've seen the film or anything like that, but I mean, certainly for someone who writes in the kind of genre that I write, it's just really like grim and just dirty and just horrible. The opening sentence to that book is, as far as I'm concerned, the best opening sentence of any book of all time. It's the first time I read that opening sentence, and I knew from that point on what kind of writer I wanted to be. That's how much that one line affected me.
What's the opening sentence?
So okay, I might slightly misquote this because I'm terrible for remembering things, but the opening sentence is, in 18th century France, there lived a man who was one of the most gifted and abominable personages in an era that knew no lack of gifted and abominable personages.
Nice.
Oh, that's
cool. It slams. It's just,
yeah.
You read that and you know exactly what you're going to get, and you know that it is not going to be pretty, and it's just not. It's one of my favorite kind of eras. It's kind of revolutionary turn of the century France where everything was terrible and everyone was dying. And yeah, it's just, people either love it or they hate it. And I definitely fall into the love it camp.
That's awesome. Okay. Very cool. There's really only been 2 books that have actually scared me. Well, maybe like 2.5. One of them, the half portion of it is Dean Koontz's Soul Survivor. Most of the book is kind of a like thriller mystery, but there's 2 scenes in it that are absolutely like literally like haunt me in my dreams. And it's kind of this I wouldn't be able to give much away, but he's in a house. He's trying to track down some information, the main character, and he visits these people and he's like asking him about this incident that happened years ago or whatever. And while he's there, like just weird stuff starts to happen in the house, like lights are kind of flickering, and there's just, I don't want to give anything away, but there's just different like really odd things that are happening in the house, and it kind of tends to follow him wherever he goes when he interviews one of these families. And those scenes were absolutely just like so creepy the way they were written. And then the two like main ones that have legitimately scared me recently was I've been reading a lot of Ronald Malfi. He's one of my newest favorite authors, and he kind of follows in the footsteps of Dean Koontz a little bit. Some of his books are more like thriller focused, and then some of them are more like strictly like horror focused. And his book Bone White is that book is so scary. That was one of the few books that kind of had me like you know, looking over my shoulder a little bit, or like turning on the lights in the house or whatever, because if I was listening to it late at night, there was just something so completely unsettling about it, and I just wouldn't feel comfortable in my own house while I was reading that. And
I've heard you talking about that before. Yeah,
it's so good. I highly recommend it. The audiobook is really, really good too. And it's just one of those books, like it's set in like this small town where this guy kind of goes out there to find his brother, because that was like his last known location. And then when he gets out there, there's just something really weird about the town. Like there's just something that the people in the town aren't talking about or refuse to talk about when he asks questions. And he's kind of trying to uncover this, but there's all these little stories underlying this bigger mystery that are all just like terrifying. And then finally you get to the end, and it just builds and builds and builds until it gets to like this very kind of scary and climactic ending. But yeah, I can't recommend Bone White enough. The other one that I just read, I literally just finished it yesterday, is called The Splendor of Fear. And if I can look at my Audible real quick, I can say who it's by. This is a book I've kind of just been jumping all around Audible trying to find something to read for our Halloween episode, and I think Splendor of Fear is definitely on the list. It's by Ambrose Ibsen. It's more of like a kind of like a popcorn horror movie kind of thing, like the horror movie of the summer kind of thing. But it's terrifying. It's about this girl and her boyfriend, and they've neither of them are like super great people. Like they're like, I don't know. They're likable enough like for the story, but like I don't know. They seem just like them as people in the story just kind of seem like not super likable. But they've been living together for a long time, and she's like, oh, maybe we're getting close to the point where like he's gonna propose or whatever. But she's like, it hasn't happened for years. And so then out of nowhere, he decides to do this camping trip, and she hates the outdoors. She hates going like camping, all that stuff. And so she's like, why would I go on that? And he's like begging her to go on this camping trip. Like, I just really want you to come. I just really want you to come. And he's like a big outdoorsy guy. So she's like, fine, I'll go. And so that she's starting to think like, oh, maybe this will be, the thing. Like maybe he's trying to, do something big and like propose to me out on this camping trip or whatever. So she eventually agrees. On the way out there, she's reading all this stuff about the town. And it turns out that in this particular town, it was one of those that had like a lot of like the witch hunts and like witch burning and stuff like that. And of course, like, it's a little eye rolly or whatever, but it just so happens that the weekend that they're going out to this town was the big weekend, 200 years ago, where all these witches were burned at the stake. But he didn't know that on their way out there. He just set up this camping trip. So long story short, they go out there, and nighttime comes and things get really, really spooky. And I think the thing that scared me most about this book was I think what the book does really well is it really accurately portrays how scary it is to be in the middle of the woods with no sense of like what's north, what's south. Like your phone doesn't work, like the flashlight on your phone doesn't work, and like just no like landmarks to really judge by. You can't really figure out which way you're headed. And I've been in one of those situations where, back in the day before we had like smartphones or whatever, and it was just like the little flip phones, that doesn't produce a whole lot of light. And so there's been times where I have gotten like, my friends and I were doing something stupid, and we got, stuck way out in the woods. And then it, at one point it was just me out there, and I'm trying to get out of the woods with like very little light. It's a very, very scary feeling.
Yeah.
I think the book really accurately portrays that. And not only that feeling, but then add on top of that, you have this supernatural element of you know, this dead witch who looks horrific, kind of like playing with your mind. There's a lot of like hallucinogenic things that the witch is doing to like make you think you're seeing one thing, but you're actually seeing something else. So that's another one that I would really recommend if you want to get scared.
And what were those two books called again, please?
The first one was Bone White by Ronald Malfi. And then Splendor of Fear by Ambrose Ibsen.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about, I don't know if you class it as a horror book, because I've never read it, but I've heard you talk a lot about The Last House on Needless Street as well. Is that a horror, or?
Yeah, that's I don't know if I would classify it as a horror. It's definitely got elements of that. For sure. Yeah, there's definitely elements of horror. I would say at the end of the day, it's more like a psychological thriller and kind of a mind bender. Okay. But that is legitimately one of my favorite books of all time. Like that book was executed so incredibly well, and I did not see the big twist at the end coming for even a second. Really good.
Cool.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's you know, thanks for hanging out as late as you guys have, guys. I know some of you guys are in the UK, and it's getting pretty late over there. I'm sure Holly wants to get back to Baldur's Gate 3, play that until 1 a.m. and
I wish.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and talking about Anatomy of Fear. And I'm looking forward to the general release and especially the audiobook. I can't wait to hear all of your guys' stories and kind of get to experience that after talking about it for such a long time now. So
I'm looking forward to seeing you in the t-shirt on the next.
Yeah, I will definitely have to get a t-shirt. Have you guys decided, is it like this behind me that's going to be on the t-shirt, or is there like a different logo or something?
Yeah, it'll be the first lot that are coming out is the cover illustration as a t-shirt, and then later on there'll be individual ones for each author.
Nice. Okay. Cool. All right, guys. Any final thoughts before we get out of here and I do the outro? Anything?
Just to say thank you so much for inviting me and us on. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, happy to. We'll have to do something where once the book is released, we'll have a spoiler-filled discussion with some of you guys.
That'll be so good.
Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, guys. Well, we are gonna wrap it up there. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for the past hour or two, however long it's been. Time means nothing to me anymore. It's all out the window. So yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. You can catch us on Discord, Twitter, and also Patreon. Those are all linked down in the description. I will have all of these guys, Twitters and websites and whatever linked in the description as well.
Thank you.
We, by the time this goes up, will we have a link to the book for its general release? Will we have a link to a shop or anything?
When are you looking at putting this up?
Like 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks?
By the shop, definitely there will be a link to. The pre-orders, that will be in Jacob's capable hands. So I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll play it with you.
I think we probably will.
Okay. I can always update the description later on to put a link down there if it's not up right when this video goes up. But definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm really looking forward to this anthology. And yeah, I think that's it. Like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, and we will see you on the next Fantasy Files podcast. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
And a big shout out to our first Night Angel tier patron, Shad Zaman. Thank you so much, man.